Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. I attempted to make this video and then there was some weird connection issue and then it failed. So, I'm making this video because I was requested to do so by a user here on YouTube, and the topic is interpreting the Ten Commandments in a non-literal fashion. I was requested to just give an example of this. So the first, what I like to start with is when I took a transpersonal psychology course when I was an undergrad, getting my bachelor's in psychology. I took a transpersonal psych course from a Jewish professor, and I remember this particular moment in the class because this was about 5 years ago, I think, give or take, and I remember, it was on this very subject, interesting enough. Can you interpret the Ten Commandments in a non-literal fashion? I don't remember how the conversation came up. We talked about a lot of different spiritual topics in this class. And I was actually the student in the class who raised my hand because we were talking about interpreting the Ten Commandments, and she insinuated that you could interpret the Ten Commandments in a non-literal fashion. I raised my hand and gave the same, or I gave an objection that was very similar to the user who requested this video. The user said, well, aren't there passages in Scripture that just have to be interpreted in a manifest way? And, and I said the same thing to the professor. I said, come on, well, I didn't say that, obviously, but, I raised my hand and said, well, isn't something like thou shalt not kill pretty straightforward? How could that have a deeper reading or a deeper interpretation? And and wouldn't it be diluting the text to not take that literally as a straightforward command? The professor, on one hand, agreed with me. She said that yes, something like that is pretty unambiguous, right? Thou shalt not murder, right? Thou shalt not kill. But she said that Jewish mysticism actually does interpret the Ten Commandments. In fact, it interprets all the Torah, and arguably the whole Hebrew Bible can be interpreted in a non-literal fashion. Because according to Jewish mysticism, which has now been adopted by, from my understanding, people who study the Talmud or the Midrash, that there are 4 levels of interpretation to the Torah and the Hebrew Bible, arguably. And I believe Philo also talked about this as well. So this is a pretty rich tradition of having these 4 levels of interpretation. Interesting enough, you find the same thing amongst certain Muslim scholars as well. There are 4 levels of interpreting the Quran as well. So there is this trend here amongst the Abrahamic faiths, a rich tradition of not taking the text solely in a literal fashion, to actually see that there are 3 actually deeper levels of beneath the manifest text. One example of this, so I have this book called Simple Kabbalah by Kim Zetter, and I was inspired by the request from the user to go to my local library, and I checked out about 6 or 7 books on Jewish mysticism. Some of them are just Kabbalah. One of them here, because I like to do this, I like starting off with simple things like this. Kabbalah for dummies, right? And also a couple translations of some key texts, one of which being sort of like the greatest hits of the Zohar, because that thing is like in 30 volumes or something, and I don't own that. It would be awesome to own that. I guess I'm such a nerd that I would love to own a whole set of the Talmud and the Zohar, but I don't actually own those things right now. So one thing that I came across is a correlation between the Ten Commandments and the Tree of Life, which is the central symbol of Kabbalah. And on page 130 of this book, there is the Tree of Life, which is this symbol here. And there are 10 elements to the Tree of Life, and these 10 elements correlate to, the top 3 have to do with the sort of the birth of the cosmos, if you will. This is getting very esoteric, but it's like a contraction, and it's almost like the birth, and it bursts these 7 elements down below, which correlate to the 7 days of creation that are in Genesis. But they also correlate to the Ten Commandments, because there's 10 elements here. So I would encourage because I'm not an expert in this subject. I mean, I'm going to read, and even though I'm going to read these books, that's still not going to make me an expert. But I would like to inform myself about Jewish mysticism in greater detail, and probably make a future video or videos on the subject. But I would encourage everyone to check out this tree of life concept, because it does connect to the Ten Commandments. However, I want to transition to a subject that that I have been studying for the past couple of years, which is Swedenborgian theology. And so I have here volume 10 out of 12, out of a total of 30 volumes by Emanuel Swedenborg, the mystic and scientist, who I've mentioned in a few other videos and blog posts of mine. And this is his volume 10 of his Arcana Celestia, or Secrets of Heaven. And this is his volume 10 of 12 of his line-by-line interpretation of all of Genesis and all of Exodus. So, in honor of that transpersonal psychology class that I took about 5 years ago, I just skipped to section 8901 of this book, and it's about verse 13 of chapter 10 of the 20 of the book of Exodus. Thou shalt not kill. And so Swedenborg says, thou shalt not kill signifies not to take away spiritual life from anyone, also not to extinguish faith and charity, and as also not to hold the neighbor in hatred. And then in section 8902, thou shalt not kill, that this signifies not to take away spiritual life from anyone, also not to extinguish faith and charity, as also not to hold a neighbor in hatred, is evident from the signification of killing, as being to deprive of spiritual life. That killing means this in the internal sense, so the internal sense meaning not the literal sense, is because in this sense spiritual life, or the life of heaven with man, is treated of, and spiritual life of the life of heaven with man is life of faith and charity. Therefore, by not to kill is signified also not to extinguish faith and charity in anyone. The reason why not to kill is also in the internal sense not to hold a neighbor in hatred is that he who holds in hatred continuously wishes to kill, and also would kill an act unless prevented by the fear of the penalty of the loss of life, of reputation, and the like. For hatred is of evil, is contrary to charity, and breathes nothing but the murder of him whom it hates. In the world, the murder of his body; in the other life, the murder of his soul. This is meant by the words of the Lord in the Gospel of Matthew, quote, ye have heard that it is said to them of old time, thou shalt not kill. And whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you, that whosoever is angry with his brother rashly shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. And whoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of the Gehenna of fire. End quote. Hatred against the neighbor is meant by being angry with the brother rashly, and the degree of its increase are described by saying to him, Raka, or by calling him a fool. That anger is a turning away from charity, and is from evil, thus it is hatred. That, in the internal sense, to kill denotes taking away spiritual life from anyone, consequently to extinguish faith and charity. It's evident from almost all the passages in the Word where a killing, or to kill, is mentioned, as in the book of Isaiah, and then he gives several examples to illustrate his point from the Old Testament, various passages as well. So that's just another example. That's one other example of a mystical or a deeper interpretation of one of the Ten Commandments, and he does it for all of them. But I thought that I would just look at thou shalt not kill. I'm also going to link a video in the more description section of this video, which is a video by the Swedenborg Foundation, or the channel Off the Left Eye by Curtis Child, who I believe did a video on the Ten Commandments from a Swedenborgian perspective. So if you want to see a much more flashy video, a much better produced video, I would encourage you to check out his video on the subject. I believe that video exists. I'm sure. I don't think I'm making that up, but if you do click on the more info section and there's a link, that means I was correct in my my memory serves me well. So yeah, I hope this is a good starting point. Again, this is a pretty broad subject. It could take many videos and many blog posts, but I just thought I would help people who weren't aware of this to sort of get their feet wet in the subject of pursuing a more mystical or spiritual, non-literal approach to interpreting or understanding Scripture. So, hope this helps. Thank you all for watching. Peace be with you all.